Hello and welcome to the ESCAPUZZLED podcast, your one-stop shop for all things escape rooms, immersive entertainment, tabletop and virtual escapes. My name is Corey, your host for today, and as always with me is my puzzle pal Helena. How are we doing, Helena?
Hello, Corey. I'm very well. You are sounding very good as well.
Excellent, thank you very much. And also joining us today is David Spira, the co-founder of Room Escape Artist, the resource for well-researched, rational and reasonably humorous escape room reviews, design tips, and industry commentaries. David is also half of the Reality Escape podcast with his co-host PG Law, and not only that, he still finds time to host and organize the Reality Escape Convention, which is held every year either online or in person in the United States. How do you possibly do all of this and stay sane, David?
Hi, yeah, when you list it all out, it sounds completely nuts.
It is very nuts. And I read on an article when I was doing some research that you still maintain a day job as well. Is that still a thing?
Yeah, I don't have like a full-time day job. I do consulting design work for clients. So I take those jobs as they find me. I don't consult for escape room companies, but I do all sorts of work in tech, or I'll design games for non-commercial escape room purposes.
They don't sound like small projects that you can just slip into this crazy hectic lifestyle.
No, I work with really talented people. That's how I make all of this work. Everything has a crew, everything has a team, and everything has a system. And I also do all of this with my wife, Lisa. She is wonderfully organized and very good at making efficient systems, which she is actually the reason that all of this works.
That sounds like a dream. I need
What a dream
Lisa to
team.
take over the running of my life because it's like a car on fire.
I literally have multiple project managers running different parts of my life. Sometimes it's weird, but mostly it's good.
Good. That sounds incredible, to be fair. It sounds like you've got a very hectic life, but it sounds like everything that you're doing is super fun and thoroughly enjoyable. So I doubt it feels like work.
Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
As we like to say, we take our fun very seriously. I would say over the years, as all of the different things we have made have grown, sometimes the work dial gets turned up and the fun dial gets turned down, and that's just the way it has to be. But most of the time, we're working on trying to build the organization in a way where everyone is doing a thing that they enjoy and that we're having a good time doing it.
Yeah, it can't always be fun, but it also can't always be serious. There's that balance that you've got to have, and you seem to have it down to a T.
We're trying. We're trying.
I need to get my life on track. I need to get everything sorted. It's absolute chaos and carnage, but we roll with it, and it seems to work.
If you were to see my life today, like, it's been chaos. It's just been like this whole, I'm actually in the middle of like 2 weeks. We're in the run up to the convention. And so we have all of the finalization work for the convention. And then we've also been elongating our production timeline for the podcast for Reality Escape Pod so that we're not kind of making episodes as they're coming out. And so we're now also producing season 8, and we're trying to get about half of the episodes in the bag before recon. So I'm just kind of burning the candle at both ends right now. I'm having a very good time doing most of this, but it has been a lot.
Fair play. Well, you seem to be doing well.
Yeah, thanks for squeezing us
Everything's
in.
running smoothly. Yeah, thank you for fitting us
Thrilled.
in here.
Thrilled to be here. It's a pleasure. It's an honor.
And I just want to say it on record. I know I've mentioned this before in messages, but you and PG on the podcast were the inspiration for this podcast. So without what you guys were doing, none of this would even exist either. So thank you for everything that you've done there and inspiring us to start this.
Thank you for the incredibly kind words, and it means a lot. It's
Okay,
the kind of thing you don't expect to hear, and it's cool to hear it.
we can have 5 minutes of fangirling. Oh my goodness. As soon as I heard your voice for the first time, I was like, this is talking to me. You've been in my ears
You've been in my ears too.
so long. So
It's so strange to hear, but it's very cool. It's very cool. Obviously, on the ESCAPUZZLED podcast, one of the things that we like to do to get to know our guests is our escape room player profile. That's basically a bunch of quickfire questions that we use to get to know you as fast as possible in an escape room scenario. So we put out a player type or stereotype blog a little while ago about the different stereotypes that we found within the escape industry. There's 10 or 11. We've added some, we've taken some out, we've shifted some. What would you say is your stereotype? What are you like in an escape room environment?
Oh, I looked at your post, and I don't cleanly fit into any of them, What I'll tell you is that I have a approach that is I do the thing that no one else is doing. And so
Oh.
most of the time, played a lot of escape rooms. I'm a reasonably competent escape room player. I can enjoy some things more than others, but mostly what I enjoy is having the team function well. And so most of the time these days, I am playing with experienced players, any of whom could go and solve most or all of the puzzles in the room, and almost all of whom suck at searching. And so I find myself frequently doing the searching. This is after my 2019 search renaissance year. I had realized that about 90% of the time that we took a hint, it was on a search fail. And so I decided I didn't want that to happen anymore. I was going to get good at searching again. And since then, I have found that that ends up being the role that I normally play. But I also kind of like playing a role of like solving the room and trying to see what the whole space is going to go and do. And I like to take the whole experience in. I'm happy to take it in through other people having fun. It's helpful as a reviewer. It's helpful and fun to just see all of the different pieces, which you don't necessarily see when you are heads down solving the puzzle. And so I kind of have a weird role that I've carved out for myself.
Judging by what you just said there, I'd like to change my dream team and stick you on mine because that sounds perfect. You sound like the dream player.
I'm trying. Sometimes I get real excited and then there's like, oh, I need to do this. This is mine. And I don't feel bad about doing that because I'm also frequently kind of hanging back and letting people do what they want. So I don't necessarily feel bad when I'm like, nope, this one is mine. I licked it. It is not yours.
Just like full on dragon. No.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to let the others have a go at some point. But yeah, I fully understand. It's easy to get carried away in an environment like that. It's super intense.
Yeah, and then
Mhm.
I'm the person that's like behind you guys going, "What's happening? How did that happen? What?" I know that you've solved it, but can you just tell me how you solved it so I can understand it? Like, I'm so nosy and want to know everything.
That's a good way to be.
Yeah, most escape rooms I do, there'll be something else happening in the other part of the escape room, and I'll just like wander over and go, "Oh my goodness, well done! How
I
did you
love
do
that.
it?" So you've said that you've done quite a few games now. What is your favorite theme? What do you really want to go and play?
Oh, I know other people on the show have said this. I'm going to say it too. I think that
Uh-oh.
just about anything can be done really well and anything can be done poorly. But I will answer your question. If all things being equal, I love a game that is set in a dream or a hallucination because you can justify just about anything. All of the tropey stuff, it works. It's a dream. Of course it belongs. So yeah, I really enjoy dreams and hallucinations.
That's so
I did
cool.
not expect that answer. I feel
No.
like dream sequences and hallucinations, especially in the likes of films, people hate getting to the end of the film and it being like, and it was all a dream. So to hear that is crazy.
I mean, I'm happy when you're told that's what you're experiencing. You're going into a nightmare, you're going into a dream, you're going into someone else's dream. The Dome by Mama Bazooka in the Netherlands is, an iconic game. That whole game is a hallucination. They flat out tell you that you're being administered hallucinogens and put inside of a science experiment. And they sell the hallucination through practical effects. Like, it's really damn cool what they've made.
I don't
I
even think I've
need to get
encountered
over to the
one.
Netherlands. Yeah, I've not encountered a dream or
No.
hallucination based escape room before, but sounds phenomenal. I mean, the Netherlands are doing some crazy stuff at the minute. They're putting Europe on the map. The Netherlands, Budapest, and Greece are doing crazy stuff.
I'd say the Netherlands, Athens, Greece, Spain is quite good. There's some good stuff dotted along in Germany and in Switzerland, which I haven't been to Switzerland, but I keep hearing great things. So yeah, there's just a lot of really cool things going on. That's my answer. Dream, nightmare, hallucination.
I'm somehow the negative Nancy again. This happens every single episode, but we'll take it. We'll take it. What
Time,
is
it
your
was actually
least
your fault and
favorite
not
theme?
mine.
That is 100% my fault. I'm not going to lie,
Yeah.
but it is what it is. What is your least favorite theme? Or not necessarily least favorite, it doesn't have to be a dislike, but what do you tend to shy away from, if anything?
I tend to steer clear of prison break games unless they're doing something special. I'm just kind of tired of the theme. I think it is possible to do it well. I have certainly played good prison break games, but if I didn't have to play another one, I wouldn't miss it.
Yeah, I feel like something like that is very restrictive. Unless they're adding a twist or a different element, you're right. It's very same.
It's that it's, we have an over incarceration problem in the US that like makes the whole theme feel a little bit icky to me. I know
Yeah.
people enjoy it. I don't want to rain on people's parades, and think that if you tell someone about an escape room as a concept, like they have never heard of it before, I think two of the first thoughts they're going to have are Saw and or Prison Break. And so like I get that that is a fantasy that like people think about. It's been sold to them in film and TV and video games. So like it's part of the zeitgeist. I respect that. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I'm tired of it.
That's fair. I think you mentioned there it's a little bit of an icky topic, which I agree with. Things like prison breaks and mental asylums, I feel like are a bit of a weird one because obviously they have their tropes within film and TV and stuff like that, but obviously they have a very real world aspect as well that is not necessarily taken into account all the time in those games.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a thing. And I'll be honest, I think you can pick almost any theme and I can give you a reason to be offended by it.
True.
But I'm not like searching that out and I'm not looking to live that. But I do think that like there are real problems, present day problems, and those two things are reflected in those games. And is it the end of the world? No. Is it harming people? I suspect not in a meaningful way. I think it's possible for some people to go into these games having had certain life experiences and have things go poorly. But in the grand scheme of evils in the world, it's not really moving the needle. But I do think that there are so many other options and so many exciting options that I prefer those.
Yeah, I wonder if there is any theme that hasn't been touched because there's a lot of escape rooms and a lot of places in the world.
There's quite a lot of stuff that shouldn't be touched.
I mean,
Yeah, but
there's a
has
lot-
been.
there's plenty of stuff that you probably shouldn't do. I think that there's kind of an infinite amount of space in cross pollination, which is where I really like my games to live. My go-to example is like I find offices really boring. I think most people find offices really boring. Like I stopped working a desk job because I didn't like going to an office. So I'm not excited to go to an office for funsies. But, if someone comes to me and they're like, hey, I'm looking to build an escape room. I don't have a huge budget. I kind of have to like build something that's kind of more grounded, like an office. It's like, okay, well, what can you cross that with? And my favorite easy example, and I've never seen anyone do this. I've given the example on stage before on plenty of different shows, but like cross that with something else, like the moon. What would an office look like if it were on the moon? It would look completely different aesthetically, and the story that you would tell there would be very different from the story that you would tell in a office in a big city on Earth in the present day. So that is sort of my suggestion to people, is like if you're trying to find something that is untapped, you don't have to just look at the standard tropes. You can go and cross those tropes or cross something that is more common with something that is uncommon. And as soon as you do that, you have something new.
It adds an element of uniqueness that you won't find anywhere else. Even if you do find a room that has the same theming or the same cross theming, you're still going to have completely different things because the scope when you cross two topics is going to be way bigger.
Yeah. But like if I were to tell you right now, like we're going to build an office game, we're going to build 4 of them. One of them is going to be on the moon. One of them is going to be in purgatory. One of them is going to be at the bottom of the ocean, and one of them is going to be at the top of Mount Everest. Those are different places, like fundamentally different places. And the stories you tell there, all of them are different. You can do that. And that's what I'm encouraging people to do, is to just try and find where their creativity lives and what excites them and what they can cross different ideas with.
Escape room owners, take notes. This is a masterclass.
Would you go back to an office if it was in the moon?
Maybe.
Do you mean to work or in an escape room environment?
No, to work.
I hear the moon is pretty harsh. And
It's a bit of a commute, isn't it?
yeah, the commute is rough, and I'm probably not physically built for that. So probably not for me, but the fantasy I'm on board with.
So I ran an office game. I ran a game called The Study, and I love it. But some people absolutely are just like, oh no, I'll go and do something more fun with like ghosts or labs or whatever.
The thing is, when I first started playing, one of the earlier games I've played, most of the early games I played were in studies or offices, and I adored them. You know, I'm
Yeah.
1,200 games in at this point, and I recognize fully that people aren't making these games explicitly for me, and I don't really encourage you to make games explicitly for me and my ilk. But I also talk to a lot of owners. I see a lot of data from people, and adding excitement, adding something extra that makes the player feel like they have been yanked out of their reality and put into a place that is different, more fun, better than the real world they're in. That's a special thing, and people are willing to pay for that.
Like my first game was The Study. And I really enjoyed it, and I have a little soft spot in my heart for it. But now I'm like, oh yeah, of course I want to go do this crazy game that everybody's recommended me, because I'm just on a different level. I've done so many games now. I'm now looking for those really stand out, really difficult, you need a full team sort of games. Which is
I don't even care if they're difficult. Put me in an easy game that sends me on an amazing adventure. That's cool.
Yeah, when you stand in the middle of an escape room and go, God, this set dressing is incredible.
Yeah, I just love that feeling when you're like, a person made this or a group of people made this. Like that is what inspires me. It's why we have a podcast. It's why we're interviewing the creators of things, and I imagine it's why you are as well. It's just cool to go and play these incredible creations that, like, sometimes you're like, I can't believe this exists. Like why did, like, someone made this? Why did they do that? It's incredible, and I want to get that story. I want to have that conversation. I want to know that person.
Yeah, it's like a look inside of their brain. The escape room that they've created is like their creativity personified, and it's so cool to see. And if you can step into an environment like that and just get totally lost, there's been times where I've gone into an escape room and halfway through I've gone, wow, I forgot that I'm in the middle of a town center in a small office block, because it's that engrossing and everything is just perfect and the immersiveness is just through the roof.
Indeed. But yeah, could do without prisons.
So you've obviously done a lot of escape rooms. How many escape rooms did you say? Like 1,200? Is that right?
About 1,200. It depends on how you count.
Good.
Depends on what you're counting, but let's call it about 1,200.
Do you have them all listed and reviewed on Morty, though? That's the real question.
I have them all in my own spreadsheet, and a lot of them
okay.
are on Morty. A lot of the games I played, especially in the early days, don't exist. The companies don't exist, and so some of that stuff just never made it into Morty.
I was really sad. I was like, I've done so many games, but they've all closed.
Yeah, there's definitely that thing, especially the early ones. And then there's some where I look at it and I'm like, oh, why didn't that close? Why is that still open?
Yeah, and you're like, well, it's quite impressive that you guys are still there.
Yeah, we've all played those games.
We've all played them. So what is your favorite type of lock?
In addition to all the escape room stuff, I have been a lock sporter for about 20 years. I've been picking locks for a little more than 20 years. So I can really nerd out about locks.
This seems like the perfect question for you. We got the right guy.
Yeah.
What is it called?
Lock sport.
Lock sport.
It's
So like lock
basically,
picking.
lock sport is the way that lock pickers have rebranded themselves to go and sound less offensive to the world. Because honestly, most
Aw.
lock pickers are not criminals. Most of them are hobbyists who like to know how things work and like to develop skills and have good dexterity. And most locks are terrible. So if lock pickers were being malicious, I mean, everything would be broken into all the time.
Watching videos of the lockpicking lawyer, where he'll just take a lock and within maybe 2 seconds it's open, you just think, wow, people are chaining up bikes and expensive electronics and e-scooters and things like that with these locks, and they're null and void.
I will say this, he is freakishly talented. So,
I just enjoy his voice. His voice is like,
he's got a great voice, and he is very good at explaining things. And above all of that, he is a ludicrously talented lockpicker, just unbelievable. But yeah, you were asking me what my favorite kind of lock is.
I feel like this is now like asking what your favorite child is or what your favorite ever escape room is.
My favorite locks are locks that I've never seen in an escape room. There's a lock called the Bowley lock that is just really nifty. I'd love to see one in an escape room, and I haven't. There's the Forever lock. I wouldn't recommend putting it into an escape room. It's super, super cool, and people will do terrible things to it because they won't understand how it works, but it's super cool. Highly recommend looking these up on YouTube. They're really nifty. But
We'll
if
have them linked in the show notes.
yeah, if I had to pick one specific lock that I love in an escape room, it's a cryptex made by Justin Nevins. Not just any cryptex, not one of the ones you're buying off of Amazon from China. Those things fall apart. They're not very good. Justin is the original creator of the cryptex. He's from outside of Seattle, Washington. And long before escape rooms, he was driving across the country, listening to the Da Vinci Code on tape, and heard this description of the cryptex and decided he wanted to make that. And then he spent a lot of time and energy figuring out how to make cryptexes. And they're not that well known in Europe. They're pretty well known in the US. He makes these things. They are works of art. They are super sturdy. If anything breaks on them, he will just send you the part that you need to replace. And they're dense. They're heavy. Like, they're not going anywhere. My cryptex is going to outlive me. It also could be used as a murder weapon if you wanted to. It's a really well-constructed item. It is one of the few things that I think you can just like buy, put it into an escape room, and it is good to go. Like, there's nothing you need to do to it. It just set the right code, put what you want in it. It's great. So yeah, big fan of the Justin Nevins cryptex. Highly recommend them.
I feel like it would be a crime against humanity putting one of these in an escape room, because these are not locks or puzzles. These are literally works of art. They're absolutely stunning.
He makes 3 different types. He makes the ones out of like stone. They're super heavy. They're really cool. Don't put that in the escape room. He
That's
makes
so
them out of
cool.
wood. It has like wood spacers. Don't use those in an escape room ever. Absolutely ever. Those are all works of art. But then he has his replica line, and those are all made out of aluminum and brass and some form of plastic. And those are the ones you put into an escape room. They're not the cheapest thing. I think they're like $350, $400, but they will outlast all the other props in your room. You'll replace those cryptexes that you buy on Amazon for like, $30, $40. You'll replace those over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And then you'll be like, oh, I should have just bought something from Justin. He's not paying me for any of this. I just love his stuff.
That's going straight into our group chat.
Even the ones on the cheaper end are still absolutely gorgeous.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
I highly recommend them. And Justin's a good guy.
Wow. When I think about it now, I've definitely spent more than like $350 or pounds on cryptexes. So I used to get 6 per year. So it was 1 every 2 months. Even if they weren't dead yet, we'd still change them out every 2 months and then just like harvest them for parts, because they are pretty like, if you buy it for one brand, you can very much like pull bits off on some bits and put them onto another.
Yeah, you
But
make a Franken cryptex.
So many Franken cryptexes, because sometimes they didn't last the whole 2 months either. So the failure point on most cryptexes are like the sliding lid. So the lid will come off the slide, so you just can't get it out anymore. So as soon as we got cryptexes, we had to set the codes and then we glue them together. And I know that's pretty much blasphemy, but it's the only way to
No,
get
that
them
makes
to
sense.
last.
Especially if you're using the ones you're buying on Amazon. Like, you got to do that. And you got to do what you got to do to go and preserve the longevity of them as best you can. But yeah, I would say that if you are struggling with cryptex problems, Justin is a very good solution to them. And a good guy and a really active member of the escape room community. He plays games. He travels to play games. He loves this industry and he's super engaged with it. So like, he also will do custom work. So if you need a cryptex that's a little bit longer or a little bit shorter, costs more money, but he can frequently accommodate the stuff. He can't make them more narrow. If you want something that's smaller, his are kind of chunky. If you want something smaller, like in diameter, he can't really do that. But if you need one that is an extra letter longer or shorter, like, he can usually make that work for you.
I feel like we need to get Justin on the podcast just to geek out over locks.
Yes, I would like to be friends with this man.
Yeah, the Nevins line and the custom line on his website are just really stunning. We'll put this all in the show notes so you guys can geek out as much as we are.
Yeah.
On the flip side, what would you say is your least favorite puzzle? If you rock up to a room, you get to a puzzle, is there anything you shy away from and let others take part in? I know you say you tend to be the person who's taking on the puzzles that everybody else doesn't want to do, but what's turning you away?
The thing that I tend to avoid is I have a really hard time reading in an escape room environment. So if you give me a wall of text or a big thick journal, I am handing it to my lovely wife Lisa and saying, "Hey, I found something for you."
So conveniently, this is meant for you. It's got your name right here
Yep.
at the bottom of all of this text.
I'm dyslexic, and so I struggle to read in this particular environment. I can do it, and if no one else is going to do it, I will absolutely do it. Or if something is super, super interesting about it, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to bite the bullet and I'm going to do it, I will, but I would avoid it if I can.
That's fair. That's understandable. I feel like for most people, large chunks of texts are an immediate,
Nope.
my goodness, this is going to be boring. This is going to take forever. So I fully understand. I am very much the same in that regard.
I'd much rather have a written puzzle or a wordy puzzle, but stuff's just highlighted, so you can skim read it really quickly. If you can't do it, if you've actually actively got to read everything that is printed and memorized for all the bits of the game, hate it. Hate it, hate it.
I also dislike red herrings that are just large bits of text that you end up reading by accident and they serve zero purpose at all but to stop you and slow you down.
Yeah, I mean, red herrings aren't even puzzles at that point, so like I wouldn't give that as an answer to the question, but yeah, red herrings, anything that isn't actual game content with nutritional value for the game that it is in, that is kind of a no-no for me.
We've talked about you being nigh on the perfect escape room person to have on your team. But what would you say if you had to pick one thing? What would you say is your main strength?
The thing that I am really good at and I love to do, I love all sorts of dexterity challenges. I love kind of physical manipulation of things. That is the thing that gets me the most excited if I'm in a game space. I also really enjoy interacting with performers. I enjoy kind of like if there's a social engineering challenge, you got to persuade someone to do something or steal something. Like I like that kind of stuff. I like kind of roguish things in escape rooms.
That's really cool. That's strange to hear because most people, when you say you have to interact and socialize with an in-game character, people are immediately like, yep, that's not for me.
Oh, I love it. And I think that there is a lot of joy to be had in that kind of thing. I think that the discourse around actors is in the escape room community is often a little bit misguided. I think that like a lot of the times when people talk about disliking actors in escape rooms, I think they're often talking about having like an in-room game master or who isn't really an actor, isn't really adding something. They feel like a security guard staring at you, or they're thinking of a scare actor who is there just to put you on edge, to destabilize you. Those are different things, and they're not everything that an actor can be. And so when people are like, oh, I'll never play a game with an actor, I was like that feels really narrow-minded to me. It feels like there's a lot of opportunities for performers that you might not appreciate are possible.
Yeah, I feel like actors in an escape room opens up an entirely new possibility. It's like, I mean, you already have the sets for a film, but introducing those characters and those interactions and unique aspects that only you are getting in that instance, because obviously most of the actors are sort of bouncing off you, it opens up a lot of unique interactions that only you could potentially experience, which is super cool.
Yeah, there's some really cool things that are doing it. Cyber City 2049 in Barcelona has some brilliant actor interactions, and there's a lot of variability, and they allow you to kind of play. And if you come up with a solution that they can accommodate, they will. And you can change the structure and outcome of the game by saying something to this performer. And it's a really cool thing. And I think that there is magic to be had and wonderful experiences that you can have if you can separate bad actor interactions from good and separate your anxiety of dealing with a person who isn't fundamentally on your team from what you can get out of that person if you embrace them a little bit. I also think that like learning how to get over that fear, there's also some good personal growth opportunities that might help you in life.
Oh, 100%. And as you mentioned there, the flexibility, especially in the game that you just mentioned, it almost makes it seem like the game is bigger than it actually is, because obviously they're catering to your ideas and your suggestions and things like that. So you almost then think, wow, what if I had have said something else? Would it have then gone into a different direction? What are the ends of this possibility?
And it's true. The game is bigger than the experience you had, because if you said something different, or if you can skip over stuff. Like we accidentally skipped over thing, not even accidentally. We weren't interested in it, and it didn't occur to us that it was relevant. And so there's a thing that we didn't do in that game. But then on the flip side, there's a thing we did in that game that almost no one has done, and we completely changed the way that it played out. And that's cool. And so now I have a game experience that when I talk to other people who've played it, we can talk about the differences in that game and what was exciting and interesting about that. That is really cool. In some ways, it's for me, it's kind of cooler than going and being like, oh, you played that game too? You loved it? Cool. I loved it too. You remember that thing that at the end that they did that? Oh yeah, that was cool. Cool. We had a good time. Cool. Instead,
Yeah, I
there's
think
that dialogue about, well, you did that. Wow, that's what happens when you did that. That's so funny. I can't believe that happened. You know, we did this, and they're like, oh, damn, you could do that? I had no idea.
I feel like they're the kind of things that really set rooms apart, especially when you look at rooms that are hitting sort of the top listings on Turbica year in, year out. That's the kind of small details that they're adding that just blow every other escape room out of the water.
You can build a really wonderful game that is hyper regimented. It's a machine. It works the same way every time. And that is a valid, wonderful way to build games. I love games that do that. But there's also magic and serendipity. And I wouldn't recommend building a game that is built entirely around that, although you can. And some people have done that successfully. But you can add just a little bit of serendipity, a little bit of chaos, and a little bit of variability, and increase a lot of opportunities for fun. You know, my feeling is you've already got a game master there. You're paying them the same, whether they're sitting in a room staring at a computer, or whether they step out of that room and maybe do a thing, you know, for 2 minutes of that game.
100%. I feel like one of the things, especially when we've spoken to owners in the past, one of the things that tends to put owners off is obviously the pricing of potentially paying for a second game master. But as you mentioned there's a lot of rooms around the world that do it perfectly, where the games operator is both the person at the desk operating the room, but also a character that comes in and interacts from time to time. And again, that's not taking away from the running of the room, because when they're in there, they're still managing the room, they're still operating the room, they're just not sat at a PC doing so. They're still taking part in it.
They also don't necessarily need to be in the room. They can call you over something. It can be a voice interaction. They can put their hand through a hole and operate a puppet, and you can interact with a little alien or little woodland critter or something like that. There are a lot of different ways to incorporate this that are not a person has put on a costume and has stepped into a space and now they are assuming the role of a character. Like, there are a lot of different shades of gray that you can explore that I think are really rich, really fun, really memorable. And a lot of them are a lot easier to train for than like training someone to use their full body and voice to be a presence in a space.
Yeah, you're not then having to hire world-class actors for all of your positions in your rooms. You can hire somebody that you can shape into a reasonably good actor to do exactly what you need to give the customer the experience that they hope for. Because at the end of the day, the escape room's purpose is to create a long-lasting memory for the people that take part in it. And I think if you can use any sort of technique to do that, as you say, whether it's a person that's actually in the room or whether it's just a phone on the other side of the walkie-talkie or a telephone, it's super unique. And again, hint systems are another way that people have done super unique things that have really set them apart.
Make your hint system fun. Make your hint system feel like content that they are eager to engage with and not a penalty that they are incurring. And they will engage more freely with the hint system. They'll have a better time. They'll be more satisfied with it.
I feel like hint systems have become sort of notoriously bad things. Everybody's like, nope, I'm not taking a hint. That's not happening. This is bad. But a lot of games that have implemented hint systems well, you almost want to interact with the characters and you want those interactions to make your game more interesting. Not necessarily taking a hint every time, but having those interesting interactions. And I know certainly for a lot of rooms in America, there's a lot of character-based hint systems, and those characters have lore and fans and merch and all sorts of crazy stuff. So evidently,
some of the good ones. It's not everywhere. The upper end is doing really cool stuff, and a lot of them are doing the typical things that you see in hint systems. But like ultimately, hint systems are there for the company as much as they are for the player. They're there to make sure that people have fun. And when the fun stops, the hint system is there to get them to have fun again. And you as a company want the player having fun because, as we are fond of saying, idle hands break shit. You want people to have a good time, because people who have a good time come out feeling good. They want to play again. They'll book again. They want to tell their friends so that you get more customers. You want your customers leaving happy. And I think that like a lot of it is just the way it's teed up. Too many escape rooms introduce you by saying some variation of, are you smart enough to win this game? Or are you a bunch of dummies who are going to lose this game in 60 minutes? You have 3 hints. I'm not going to give you any more than 3. If you use up all of them, you're going to lose this game. If you use any hints, you're going to feel bad about yourselves because I've already thrown down this gauntlet and I have put your ego on the line. Go have fun.
I've had games that have had like time penalties if you've had clues, which I think about it now, and so many people have came into my games and gone, oh, well, if we get clues, do we have time taken off? And I'm like, no, of course not. I want to enjoy your game too as your game master. I want to see you have fun. I want to have a cheeky back and forth with my clues.
Yeah.
I've got a bird that will craw at you. Yes, use me.
Lower the stakes around your hints. You can increase the stakes in the story, but lower the stakes around your players' egos, and they will have a better time. They will be more willing to engage with your hint system if their ego isn't on the line, and they'll certainly be more interested in engaging with it if it's fun or funny or memorable.
I get the feeling that this is going to be a dangerously long past podcast, but it is going to be an absolute masterclass, and owners listening should really be sat taking notes right now, because I mean, not to put you on a pedestal, but having 1,200 games under your belt, you've seen the best and the worst of escape rooms. You've seen what works, what doesn't, what does well for businesses, what doesn't.
We've played a lot. We've seen a lot. I think the thing that we have at Room Escape Artist, to just be honest, is like we have spent a lot of time thinking about the implications of stuff. And we spend a lot of time talking to owners, and we spend a lot of time looking at the way these games are functioning and talking to other people who were playing them and getting a sense of how their experience differed. We spend a lot of time analyzing these games. You know, we spend an hour playing them. Every review that you see that we put out is 3 hours of writing and editing and discussion. Some of them are a little bit more, some of them are a little bit less, but on average, we're spending 2 to 3 hours on a typical review. If we've spent 1,200 hours playing escape rooms, you know, we've spent close to 4,000 hours writing about them. And so it's a lot of focus on what these games are, what makes them fun, what brings people back. You know, we're not writing to advocate for bigger, more beautiful games, harder puzzles, or any of that. In fact, I strongly dissuade people from designing hard puzzles. We're trying to build a knowledge base in the community around how to do this stuff well. And that's what the podcast, the convention, and all of the written content is about. And that's where we take this stuff. When I say like we take our fun very seriously, that's what I mean, is like we're doing the work every single day.
It shows.
Thank you.
I 100% agree. I think one thing that owners should really take from what's being said here, and obviously this isn't me forcing this upon owners, but if you look at almost any other experience-based thing, you're looking at customer first. Even restaurants, you're looking at the customer journey before you're putting food on a table. But when it comes to an escape room, more often than not, it's puzzles and set design first before you even consider how the customer's going to feel, how the customer's going to interact, what they're going to do. It's crazy to think like that. And I think the more you can sort of center the experience around the person that's going to be in it and not around the experience itself, then you're going to have significantly better rooms.
I completely agree with that. I think that if you talk to magicians, they kind of talk about the effect versus the method. And most of the good magicians that you meet, they will talk about figuring out what is the effect that I want to have. I want to make a thing disappear. Okay, well, there are hundreds of different ways I can make that thing disappear. What is the right way to do that? But they start with the effect, and they start with trying to figure out, well, what do I want to make the audience feel? What's the right moment to create for them? And I think that is, you know, pick your moments. In my opinion, you can go bigger than this, but every escape room should have a big moment in the beginning, a big moment in the middle, and a big moment in the end. If you want to go leaner, have a big moment in the beginning and a big moment in the end. Reason for that is primacy and recency bias. People are more likely to remember the first thing that happens and the last thing that happens. Mostly, if you look back at an escape room, especially when you loved it you played a few years ago, you're not remembering the whole game in most cases. You're remembering a couple of key moments. You're also remembering the things that you were involved in. You know, we have a joke on the podcast that PG's favorite moment is always the one that she got to solve. That's most people. I would say it's like, you know, me too. There are plenty of times where I've been like, oh yeah, this is my favorite puzzle in the game. It's like, oh yeah, well, I also solved that one. But having a couple of things, 2 to 3 things, they're just really big, really cool moments that serve the story, that serve the emotional arc that you want them to be on. Those are the things they're going to go home remembering. Those are the things that are going to make them go and tell their friends, hey, you got to go to that escape room because I want to talk to you about it.
Yeah, 100% agree. And it might surprise you to hear this, but I come from a magic background.
Ah,
That is why my brain also resides in that
there we go.
experience first.
I think I remember you saying that in one of the first episodes, but then it fell out of my brain.
Yeah, but you're 100% right. At the end of the day, especially from a magic front, you're giving this person an otherworldly experience that they're not going to potentially see anywhere else. It's exactly the same in an escape room environment. And if you can shape the way that the person sees something or the way that the person does something to create a lasting memory, that's so much more powerful than a good puzzle or great set design.
As we have just spent probably about 15 minutes talking about your strengths in an escape room, what you love in an escape room, but what are your weaknesses?
Oh gosh. I mean, I kind of have been pretty open about it already. Like it's the reading thing is a struggle. I read using atypical methods that just don't work in an escape room environment. So yeah, that's my biggest weakness and it's not close.
That's fair. Have you seen that font that you can get that has bolded first letters? I've started using it recently.
It
Yeah.
really does help.
It's sensational. So,
Yeah.
small thing for owners, if you want to stick that in your games, that would make everyone's lives a little bit easier.
Or just, you know,
Anything.
handle things with voiceovers and
Yeah, remove the
Yeah.
text.
yeah.
Let's get rid of the text.
Sometimes the text is the right thing to do, but I don't think it needs to be the first tool you reach for.
Yeah, 100%. And again, seeing story development in text is frustrating because it can be achieved in so many other ways.
Yeah, I think escape room story is best when it's being felt, not told or read.
Yeah, 100%. Especially through puzzles. Like, puzzles tend to just be puzzles for the sake of puzzles as opposed to actual story driving narratives.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know when you first get into an escape room and occasionally it's like start on this thing that you have to read before you can do anything else?
Mm-hmm.
I always think that why isn't my game host doing this?
Why not have a little video with closed caption, a good voiceover person?
Just
Yeah.
something a little bit more interactive than just a bit of paper
Yeah.
on a desk.
So, you unfortunately have to be on this team as well, but who would be on your dream team? If you had to pull yourself and 4 others into a game, it could be anybody alive, it could be resurrected from the dead, there could be celebrities. Who is on your 5-man team?
Oh, okay. So for one thing, I'm gonna play with my wife, Lisa. Love playing with Lisa. Together we are one competent human. So I now am looking to select 3 other people.
I'll let you know in advance that most other people that have answered this question have just gone for 3 people that they'd like to spend 60 minutes in a room with, and none of it's ever practical.
that is going to be my answer. I would like to hang out with 3 interesting people from history. So let's go with Ada Lovelace, Benjamin Franklin, and let's get someone who'll be like really, you know, really confused. And yeah, let's get like Cicero, the Roman senator.
Okay.
I know this is our question, but are we under the assumption that they are just being dragged out of their timeline and dropped into an escape room with you?
Sure. Let's say yes.
Really confuse everyone.
Look, Lisa and I can handle the games, and then you know we'll talk to them.
So obviously we've discussed a lot about the things that you do, but we've not really touched upon how you came about what you do. So why escape rooms, and how did you get into them?
Escape rooms kind of chose me. I was researching a trip with one of my oldest friends to Budapest. We bought this dirt cheap airfare hotel package on Groupon to go and do a couple days in Budapest and a couple days in Prague. And this was early 2014. And at the end of 2013, we were planning this trip together. And so I looked on TripAdvisor and found that the top rated thing to do in Budapest at the time was called Claustrophilia. It had a whole bunch of 5-star ratings, and that name and the 5-star ratings warranted further investigation. I looked into it, and it was an escape room. I had never heard of the concept, and I immediately fell in love with the idea of it. I grew up playing video games, particularly puzzle video games, just always had a sense of adventure, and I was just like enchanted by the concept. And so I sent a message to my friend. She agreed. We were definitely going to go and do this. The next morning, I woke up and I had what I refer to as my entitled New Yorker moment, where I said, if this exists in Budapest, there should be one in New York City. And so I Googled it. And the very first escape room outside of San Francisco in the United States had just opened in New York. And so I booked out the entire room and brought a whole bunch of friends. January 2014. I didn't tell them what we were doing. I just told them that it was going to cost $28, that I thought it was going to take about an hour and a half, that I was pretty sure it was going to be fun, I was pretty sure it was going to be safe. And I gave them the address of a bar that was a few blocks away in Midtown Manhattan so that they couldn't figure out what we were doing. We met early, we all had a drink, and then I walked them over to the building and they found out what we were doing in the elevator up. And I played this game with them, immediately fell in love with it. And then a couple days later, I met Lisa in a bar and was telling her about this weird puzzle escape room thing that I had done. And we chatted about that. We chatted about a whole bunch of other things. And I asked for a number.
And the rest was history.
That's my origin story.
That's so lovely. So you met your current wife in a bar, nerding out about escape rooms.
Yep.
Oh, we love that so much.
Yep. Escape rooms and board games and a whole bunch of other stuff. But yeah, we just hit it off. And escape rooms played a non-trivial part of that.
So you technically took your friends out of their timeline and dragged them into an unknown scenario, just like you would your dream team.
Yeah, that is true. That is a thing that I have done.
I mean, it's not the worst thing you can do to your friends, so fair play.
No, they had a good time. Most of
I'd
them
love
have
to
gone back to
be-
play more.
Oh, I'd love to be like, just bundled in the back of a car and forced to do escape rooms. I'm game for that.
Yeah, I hope, if my friends are listening to the podcast, take note.
Yeah, I know, right? Just randomly booking escape rooms. Thank you. So you've told us about your wonderful wife and how you met her. So when you later went on to both start Room Escape Artists, did you expect it would grow to the size that it has?
Hell no.
There we go.
No.
2-word answer. Question done.
Yeah, no. I mean, the honest truth is that I thought that escape rooms were going to be a niche, nerdy, underground thing for like 5 to 10 years, and that we were going to make this website. I had been blogging for a long time. I'm professionally a user experience designer. I design lots of stuff. And as I was meeting various owners, they were all saying different things along the lines of, it's the Wild West. There are no rules. No one knows what they're doing. We're just making this all up as we go along. And I was looking at it saying, escape rooms are kind of just a collection of interfaces, and there are rules for how you can make better interfaces. You don't know them, but I could explain them. And so that was sort of where it started, along with Lisa and I had made a map with a few of our friends of all of the escape room locations in the US. And at the time, it was like 24 across the whole country. And we said, well, this is cool information. We put in a few hours to find it. My guess is someone else wants it. So we should just like throw it on a Google Maps and put that somewhere. And well, we have a map. I have some thoughts about like how these games could be designed better. We also had started writing little like primers to bring, as we started bringing friends to escape rooms, we started to bring a primer because people were intimidated to come play with us because we were the experts, because we had played like 3 games. And so we wrote a little bit of like, this is what an escape room is. This is how you can be an effective teammate. These are some of the things that will cause problems for the team or for you. And so we made these little primers to make our friends feel a little bit more comfortable. And so we started to amass this content. And I was sort of like, well, we could make a little website about this and maybe we'll put out a post or 2 a month. And over time, this will become mainstream at some point, maybe. And if that ever happens, we'll have a website that we can maybe do a little bit more with. And within a few weeks of us launching the site, a number of games that started to open started to like grow exponentially. The interest in the space started growing, and we, next thing I know, we're on TV. We're doing interviews with journalists every other week, and we mostly just started from a place of we loved escape rooms. We wanted more people to know about them. We wanted to increase awareness of them, and over time, we started to develop our knowledge more, and it became a collection of different things of increasing complexity. But mostly it just started from this evil plan of we like escape rooms. We want there to be more of them, and we want them to be better. We want the companies to make more money so that they make more games that are better and we can have more fun. That was the plan. And we just never expected any of it to become what it was. Like, we never expected it to eat our lives and our social life and to become this central part of the world that we built together. There was no plan. There was no expectation for that.
I always say that when you've got these really big plans, you're like, oh my goodness, it's all of a sudden grown legs and you just can't control it anymore. And it's an incredible position to be in.
It's really cool. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really scary. And there were a lot of different points in time along the way where we had to stop and say, like, okay, this is getting more serious. We need to either stop doing this or we need to get more serious. And like the first example of that was there was a game called The Art Studio that we wrote a review of at a company called Mission Escape in New York City. The game doesn't exist anymore. The company still does. We played that game, and the owners, give you the short version of the story. As we were walking in, a bunch of very beefy looking, broy looking guys, lads, I think you would call them, high-fiving each other and being like, oh yeah, they never expected us to solve it that way. And they walk out of the building, and the owners come out looking very sheepish, and they're like, hey, we're going to need a few minutes to fix something. And it turned out that the last lockbox, when we walked into the room, it was duct taped back together because these guys literally just smashed the thing. And so we wrote a review of that game, and the game was, it was an early escape room. We wrote a review basically saying something along the lines of it had some really cool ideas. It wasn't very well built. And if they want to have people playing this thing, it needs to be built more soundly. And we published the review, didn't think anything of it. A few weeks pass, and we go back to that company to play a second game, and we do. And as we're leaving that game, the owner, who we didn't even know was the owner, pulls us aside as our team is going back to the lobby, and he says, hey, I just wanted to talk to you for a minute because I read your review. And I'm thinking, oh no, I'm about to get punched.
Oh, God.
And he says, we read your review and you were right. The game wasn't built well enough. And so we shut it down and we rebuilt the entire thing, and we made it look better, and we made it a lot more sturdy. And he threw the door open, and the game was like completely rebuilt, like to a shocking degree. And he thanked us and he sent us on our way. And Lisa and I went home and we poured ourselves a drink, and we said we weren't expecting people to start making business decisions based off of what we were putting out there. So we need to like really be serious about this, or we need to quit. And there were a whole bunch of other moments like that, but we're always hitting these inflection points where we're like, okay, this is all a lot more serious than we had expected. What are we doing now?
That's crazy. It sounds like you guys have had such a phenomenal journey. And to think in the grand scheme of things, you guys are probably still at the start of this journey is insane. I
hope so. I hope we're at the start of it. It's been a fun journey so far. It's 10 years in this fall, and I hope
a lot
it keeps going.
Has come about in 10 years. That's not a long time at all.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Obviously, as you mentioned there, you've played an unholy amount of rooms, and you've obviously got room escape artists. But another thing that you do alongside that is obviously the podcast that we mentioned at the start. As I say, it's been a massive inspiration for both of us and the entire reason that this podcast started. So how did the podcast with PG come about, and who have been some of your favorite guests?
Okay, so the podcast was an idea that I had after going to a conference back in 2018. I had some wonderful conversations with some really talented owners. This was over in Europe, and it had dawned on me that I had this privilege of talking to people who don't normally get to talk to them, and hearing all of these stories and learning all of this stuff. So it would be really cool if I could do that. And I recorded one episode, and I just wasn't ready. I didn't have the chops as an interviewer. I certainly didn't know anything about editing audio, and I did not have the time. And so that thing sat untouched for a long time. It still hasn't really been touched, but the idea remained in my head. And then in 2020, we ran Recon virtually. And along the way, I had met PG Law, my co-host. She's a 2-time Survivor player, and I'm a longtime Survivor fan. She was this character on TV for me. I'm not like creepy crazy fan, like obsessing over it, but like I found Survivor when I was in grad school and really lonely. I moved to a new city, and Survivor was, it was also during the TV writers' strike. Survivor was a thing that was on TV, and PG was like shortly after I started watching, she was there. And so she was like one of like this character from television. And then we met on a different podcast and started talking, realizing we were kind of kindred spirits. We both loved all of the same stuff. And when the pandemic hit, I sent her a message and said, hey, we're bringing on a whole bunch of writers to do a whole bunch of other stuff. Do you want to be involved? And she was like, sure. I got nothing to do. And then we started working on the convention. We said, well, we really need someone to handle live Q&A. Who do we want? So, well, PG has a really good presence and she's, you know, comfortable doing this stuff. What if we recruit PG? She did a bang up job. And Nick Moran, creator of Time Run and Phantom Peak, over the years, he was constantly sending me messages saying, when are you starting a podcast? And I kept saying, I'm thinking about it. And after Recon, I was sort of like, okay, I want to do a podcast. I want to co-host because I don't want it to be the David show. And I want someone who has a different voice from me. You know, I want someone who has a different level of knowledge, who can be kind of a way in for the audience. I want somebody who is a lot more fun and a lot less professorial than I am. Because both me and Lisa have big professor energy. And I wanted someone who was cool, unlike me. So that was where we started. And we figured out what it was together. There was always a push and pull. I wanted a really hyper-produced product. She wanted something a little bit more free flow, which is how we ended up with our bonus show. The bonus show is kind of PG's vision. The main show is my vision. And over the years, there's just kind of been this push-pull. We're very different in the way that we operate. That difference has consistently been strength. And I am so thankful that we work together on this thing and that we're building this thing together, because she brings a lot of the things that I don't bring, and I bring a lot of the things that she doesn't. We both know our roles now, and we're both good enough at our roles that we also can like swap roles occasionally, which is also kind of fun. So that's all of that stuff. You were also asking me about some of my favorite guests. And so now you're making me pick my favorite children.
Sorry, I know. I know.
It's okay.
You've got so many, and
There's
we're
so
asking
many.
for a few, so I feel like you're not being super picky, but also I apologize.
No, you're all good. A whole bunch of them that were really meaningful to me. Like our first guest ever was Alon Lee, creator of Exploding Kittens, who's one of the creators of the ARG alternate reality game format. He's one of the most
Oh my goodness.
brilliant game designers I've ever met. Him being our first episode was just kind of wild.
That's insane.
Yeah, absolutely insane.
What?
And I did not know enough to be afraid at the time.
Yeah.
But like I loved making that episode. Nick Moran has been on a bunch of times. I always love talking to Nick. We've had Neil Patrick Harris of stage and screen fame. He's just a delight. He kind of invited himself onto the show. And we have been so thankful to him ever since. Johanna Koljonen, she's like one of the founding mothers of Nordic LARP.
Wow.
She is absolutely amazing. I highly recommend. Her episode is like a masterclass in game design. Tommy Haunton of Stash House in Los Angeles, amazing guest. I can go on. There's so many, you know, Gijs Geers of Dark Park in the Netherlands.
I am so frustrated that Stay in the Dark closed before I had the opportunity to play it, because
it's pretty special. And then we recently interviewed on the most recent season a guy named Michael Boris, who created an experience called the 49 Boxes. He's a magician, game and puzzle designer. And I loved recording that episode so much on such a deep personal level. He's someone I really respect and look up to. I just had such a blast talking to him. So those are a handful. I could go on and on and on. We've been so lucky with guests, and it's fun every time.
To think back to when I've listened to the podcast and listened to guests, those names certainly spring to mind as some of the most enjoyable ones to listen to as well. So evidently the passion that you take in enjoyment comes across both from a podcast perspective and obviously from a knowledge perspective as well. And the guests are equally as sensational.
I think you know what it's like at this point. You know, you when you're editing these things, you listen to them so many times. And so
Yep.
even when they come out, they all come out good at the end. And I love all of the episodes, but there are some where you're like, oh, I've listened to you 40 times and I still love the words you're saying. That's special.
100%. And I mean, every guest that we've had on so far, even listening back to the podcast and hearing the stories and the knowledge for their second time and sometimes the thousandth time, it's still just as entertaining listening over and over again as it was initially recording the episode.
Absolutely. Yep.
So you also host Escape, Immerse, Explore tours, which are multi-day trips for attendees. They're basically the best escape rooms in the world. How did this start? Where can I join? Can you come to the UK? Thank you.
So we'd love to come to the UK. We're starting to look into how we can host events in Europe. It's been on the list for a long time. It got sidelined due to apocalypse.
Oh, yeah.
But we started this in 2017. The short version of this story is that we kept getting messages from people saying, I want to know the best escape room to play in Times Square. And there was no good escape room to play in Times Square. And we would say, well, you have to go to Chinatown or you have to go to Brooklyn. And I said, well, I don't want to go anywhere where I have to take the subway. And I don't want to go anywhere where I have to take a cab. And I don't want to walk very far. And so we started thinking, oh, if people are afraid of New York, this is our hometown. What if we were to just like make a little tour and guide people around, take them on the subway? You know, they don't have to buy the card. They don't have to do any of the swiping. They don't need to know which stop to get on, which stop to get off. We could just take care of it all. And we did some math and we realized that we wouldn't lose much money if we tried to do it. We'd done the math. If we wouldn't lose money if we had sold 6 tickets. And we said, well, maybe we can do that. And maybe we just meet a couple of interesting people and lose a little bit of money and have a nice weekend talking about escape rooms with escape room nerds. Initially, our capacity was 12. And those sold out like that. It was so quick. And we said, well, what's our real capacity? And we said, well, we could actually do 24. And we're never going to sell 24. We put those tickets up and they sold. Whole thing sold out. We ran the event and we were thinking, well, this is going to be a mess. Like, we're going to do our best to prep for everything. But it turned out we were really good at it. And people loved it. They had a really good time. And at the end, they asked me a question that I was not prepared for, which is, where are we going next? And I was dumbfounded by that question. I was like, what do you mean next? But then we were like, well, New Orleans is kind of cool. And Baton Rouge is also in Louisiana and has 13th Gate. They're kind of difficult to get to. What if we were to rent a bus? Well, we would need to sell more tickets. So, well, what if we ran a 36-person tour? We were like, we're going to lose money on this. We're certain we're going to lose money on it. Sold out. And went really, really well. And all the while, every time we started running these things, at the end, people are all like, where are we going next? And we just kept figuring out the next place. And we kept iterating on the product, on the way we run it. It's now much more systematized. We know what we're doing. We used to just be making it up every tour. We now kind of have a process for it. But yeah, the tours are, we bring 36 to 70 people to a location and we book them into games together and we have a whole escape room trip. And we get a lot of single travelers who don't have friends who want to travel for escape rooms. We have a lot of couples where they're like a couple friends don't want to go and play tons of escape rooms with them. We get everybody together and everyone just has a really good time. And we've done a lot of work to kind of build a culture around it that people understand how to play well with one another. And we put a lot of love into it. We adore running these events. We adore the people who come on them. And we just have a really good time. Our next one is in San Francisco in the fall. We're going to be running a Montreal tour again next year. And there'll be at least one more tour in 2025. We'll see what comes of it, but that's what we're working on.
I need to get myself over to the States for one of these tours. Top of the bucket list now.
Would love to have you. If I were to recommend to anybody, the Montreal tour is really special. All of our tours are great. If you're gonna say like I'm gonna shoot my shot, I'm gonna do one, come check out Montreal.
My bank account's crying.
I get you.
How much does it typically cost to go on one of these tours?
The prices vary based off of the cost base for us, but they're usually, I would say, in the like $800 to $950 range, and then that covers your games. It covers a meal. Usually, it covers the bus and all of the other stuff that we do. You're going to have to cover your own hotel. A lot of people will room with each other. We get a good deal on hotel rooms, or we do our best in every city to get a good deal on the hotel rooms. And then there's also whatever additional games you book beyond the tour. Some people go hog wild with that, and we get discount codes for them so that they can do that more affordably. Some people will play exactly what's on the tour. Some people will play exactly on the tour plus 1 or 2 games. Everyone handles it differently, and we've structured it so that it scales nicely for people.
I feel like that's really reasonable, especially when I think about like D&D getaways, and you'd probably pay about $3,000 for it for like a week of like Dungeons and Dragons, which is great. I loved it.
We try to keep the prices reasonable. It's not a cheap product, and I would say in recent years our prices have had to go up just because our costs keep going up.
Also, escape room costs have gone up, but like that's also
escape
not
room
you
costs,
guys.
bus costs, airfare, all of that stuff keeps as those go up, we have to adjust the model to make it work. But we do try to keep it as affordable luxury.
Well, I'll see you in a few years.
Can't wait.
Looking forward to it. If we were to give you an unlimited budget, don't run away just yet, what would you do with it in terms of what room would you create, or what experience would you build? Would it be an escape room? Would it be immersive? Would it be a combination? What are you building with an unlimited budget?
The thing that I would love to build, and I'm putting this out there because I just want anyone to build it. I kind of want it to be an open source idea. I would badly love to see escape rooms that are being built as part of blood drives. I would love to build an escape room where you, the players, are having to respond to a crisis, and the amount of resources that you have is directly in proportion to the amount of blood that you were able as a team to get donated to a blood bank before the game began.
That's crazy.
The game itself changes. It could become impossible. It could become punishingly impossible if you don't have enough resources, reflecting the way that responding to a crisis is if you don't have enough of that.
Enough blood.
Money, could be both.
Oh my God.
I mean, that's a really cool and interesting way to drive more people to give blood, because I mean, at the end of the day, they're saving lives. And I think if you can reward that with a very cool, maybe a little bit creepy escape room, that is still insane. I remember literally earlier today, I watched a short sort of documentary on a TV program that went out a little while ago, which was a game show for organ donating. Where basically the players were playing for this dying person's organs.
Wow.
And
that I do not like.
It turns out the whole thing was a hoax just to bring to light how much sort of organ donation is needed. So there was like a sort of backing behind it, and it created a massive stir. And I think the day after it aired, there was 30,000 organ donations, which in comparison to the 3,000 that they were getting a month is sensational. So evidently it worked. Obviously very controversial, but super interesting.
As somebody who donates blood, as much blood as I can donate, I will donate it. I am not fit for an escape room afterwards.
No. I don't want you to donate and then immediately play.
Well, donating in the lobby and then it's thrown into a room like.
I want you to donate in advance, and then like I'm not looking to like have people like woozy in an escape room. I don't think that's a great idea. But I think that like you can get everyone to go and give in advance, 1 bag per player per team. If you have someone on the team who can't do it, they can get a friend to go in their stead and like have that count for them. Like I'm looking to do it inclusively. But like I'd love to see a game where it's like, your resources, your experience is dictated by the way that you have acquired resources in advance. Blood, money, if there's other things that could be done to do it as a food drive. There's different ways you can do it. But I just think that would be really cool.
Sorry, this is actually really wholesome, and I've just made it about blood. But I like this idea of like you've got to bring something to your community. You've got to add something to your surrounding, like a food drive, like donating blood, like giving money, like it's basically helping everybody else before you can enjoy yourself, which I think is a really lovely way to do games.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like escape rooms are a luxury for us, but the likes of food and health are a luxury for some people that are in less fortunate positions. So to be able to assist in that whilst also having fun is such a wonderful way to do things.
That's my concept.
That's not an answer I expected to hear on the podcast ever, I'm not
No.
going to lie, but it's probably one of my favorite answers because of how wholesome and giving it is.
It's very
I
cool.
I appreciate it. I mean, look, as I make it clear on my own show, I do a lot of homework before I do things. Like, I listen to everyone. I wanted to come on here, make sure I was giving distinctive answers, and I put a lot of thought into that one in particular.
Well, it was certainly distinctive.
Yeah, thanks for that.
I was just thinking earlier when we were talking about PG before, I also very much like to read or watch or get into everything that a guest has done before we get them on, just so that I can know the most about them, to have the most interesting conversations, and obviously pull answers and questions from parts of their lives and their experience that might not necessarily get brought to light. And obviously, PG being on multiple series of Survivor means I now have to go watch multiple series of Survivor, which makes that research, one, way more fun, but way longer.
My advice is just watch Survivor China. You don't need to watch Survivor Second Chances.
Oh.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, PG would rather you not talk about it.
Sore subject, sore subject.
I love that you were like watching it and you were like, that's the one.
Literally, I was watching Survivor when she was on, and I was a PG fan. I
Okay,
wasn't
okay.
like, and then years later, kind of independently, I ended up on this other podcast with her, and I wasn't like angling for anything. Like, it never occurred to me that like, PG was going to be into escape rooms and immersive games and all of this stuff. Like, it hadn't dawned on me back when she was on. Like, that wasn't a thing. So, yeah, it was just kind of a series of happy accidents that has given me a podcast co-host and a great collaborator and a really good friend.
It's like a fairy tale story. It's crazy. Like there's far too many things that just happened by chance there for it not to be.
I mean, look, it's also along the way, it's a lot of work. We've also, we've had to learn how to work together. We are very different people. PG and I are far more different than Lisa and I. And Lisa and I are, we have our differences, but like it was easier for us to come together and start making a thing. PG and I had to learn how to work together and really work at that. And I'm glad that we were able to do it. And we both had to learn how to trust each other and learn how to trust whose instincts were the right instincts in a given situation. And that's a humbling process, I think, for both of us, and really rewarding at the same time.
So what are your plans for the future?
We are running the Reality Escape Convention in August 18th and 19th, 2024 in Los Angeles, California.
Oh my God, that's
That
so
is
soon.
devouring a lot of my time. So yeah, selling tickets, finishing touches on that. Ticket sales are going well, but could always sell a couple more. We are producing season 8 of the Reality Escape Pod that will begin airing at the end of September, I believe. And beyond that, we're writing, we're working on making further improvements to the Room Escape Artist website. We're doing all sorts of improvement projects. A lot of them are behind the scenes. Hoping to have some fun and interesting things to do with the podcast in the fall also. So yeah, they're just exciting projects to work on.
They're also exciting for us. I can't wait to attend Recon at some point in the future. I fully intend on, obviously, Recon is hosted in America, but every other year you guys host it online, which is awesome because it means everybody else in the community that can't necessarily make it across to the States can still get involved. So getting involved in that next year is definitely a must.
Look forward to having you be a part of it.
Oh, I'm excited. The future is bright.
Indeed.
So, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for taking time out of what sounds like an incredibly hectic but thoroughly enjoyable schedule. Obviously, Recon is up ahead. By the time this goes out, Recon will have happened and it will have been a massive success and nothing will have gone wrong and it'll have been seamless. But I just wanted to say thank you, obviously, again for inspiring this podcast, for saying yes to coming on and giving us some very thought-provoking and very knowledge-driven answers that I assume a lot of people listening can certainly take note of and hopefully apply to their games and apply to themselves as players and enthusiasts to then help the industry move forward, because that is everything that you guys are doing and that's everything that we strive for as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to our show and reading our stuff and inviting me on, for asking all these fun questions. It's been a pleasure talking to you, getting to know you, and yeah, look forward to getting to know you better over the years.
Certainly. And if you're ever in the UK, come say hello. The UK is tiny in comparison to the
Yeah.
United States. So
I would love to.
So, as always, if you have enjoyed the episode, please do leave a review on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you are listening to this. Tell your friends, tell other enthusiasts. Obviously, share this with other people because the guests that we get on are absolutely incredible, as highlighted today. The knowledge that you're going to get from this is, well, the knowledge I'm getting from this anyway is certainly worthwhile. So, please do join us for the next episode. If you haven't already, do check out all of the previous episodes, and we shall catch you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.